Sometimes the greatest heartbreak isn't when someone leaves you, it's when they stay. And yet, you feel more alone than ever. It's not the loud goodbyes that hurt the most. It's the quiet distance, the slow fading. When someone you love forgets how to find you. Imagine this. You're standing across from a man you love. Maybe your husband. Maybe a long-time partner. Maybe someone new. He smiles. He shows up. He carries the groceries, fixes the faucet, kisses you goodnight. He says the right words, he does the right things, but somehow he feels 1,000,000 miles away. Something in his eyes, once so alive, now flickers with distance, as if a part of him packed a suitcase you never saw. And quietly left. No matter how much kindness you offer, no matter how much love you pour out, you can feel it. He's there, but he's not with you, and the silence of it breaks your heart more than any fight ever could. This moment happens quietly, and it happens to women everywhere, especially after 50. Lisa, a woman just like you, once shared her story. After 34 years of marriage, she realized she was sleeping beside a stranger. He still kissed her forehead, he still sat with her at dinner, but the man who once couldn't stop reaching for her hand now seemed to be reaching for something far away. And one evening, after a stretch of unbearable quiet, Lisa looked at him and asked, "When was the last time you felt excited to come home?" He didn't speak, but his eyes did. They filled with something she hadn't seen in years, a sadness he didn't have words for, a longing even he had forgotten how to name. And in that fragile human moment, the truth surfaced. The love wasn't gone. It was just buried. Today, we're going to talk about why that happens, why good men drift into emotional distance, and why the way back to his heart isn't what most people think. Carl Jung once said, "We don't fall in love with the obvious. And soon, you'll see why the part of you he once couldn't resist, the part he still aches for, has nothing to do with how you look or even what you say." If you've ever felt the quiet ache of invisible distance, drop a heart in the comments, or share your story. You never know whose life you might touch. Come with me and let's open the door to something deeper. Because the first truth we need to face together is this: you don't become invisible after 50, but often that's exactly how it feels. Not because you lost your glow, but because the world stopped looking. Not because you're less interesting, but because so many people stop listening, and in relationships. That sting can be even sharper. You can be doing everything right, showing up, being loyal, offering emotional support, holding the family together. But still, it feels like you've become background noise. Why? Because many men over 50 have been trained to stop feeling. They're told to provide, to protect, to perform, but not to connect. And when you start craving deeper emotional closeness, he doesn't always know how to meet you there. So instead, he shuts down, and you start questioning everything. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm not attractive anymore. Maybe this is just what happens with time. But here's the truth. You didn't lose your value. He lost his emotional compass. Take Mark and Lisa, for example. Lisa stopped asking for connection and started inviting it. She changed one habit. Every night, instead of pushing for a conversation, she simply sat beside Mark in silence, holding her tea with presence. No scrolling, no fixing, no prompting, just presence. And slowly, Mark began to speak. First about small things, then about his fears, his regrets, his buried dreams. And Lisa realized he hadn't stopped caring. He'd just stopped knowing how to share. This is the silent grief many women carry, the grief of being unseen in plain sight. So what can you do? There are gentle, powerful ways to start feeling emotionally visible again, without pushing, without pleading. One way is to anchor your presence. When you walk into a room, don't shrink to fit. Bring your full self. Stand tall. Breathe fully. Make soft eye contact. Let your energy say, I am here and I matter. Another way is to speak emotional truths, not emotional scripts. Try this. Instead of saying, I just feel like you don't care, say, I miss feeling like we're on the same team. This softens the delivery while deepening the impact, inviting him closer instead of pushing him away. And perhaps the most beautiful way is to create rituals of emotional reconnection, moments that are just for the two of you, not to problem solve, not to fix, just to be a walk, a journal swap, a shared playlist, something that says, we still matter. You're not invisible, you're just evolving. And now it's time to invite your relationship to evolve with you. If you've ever felt like you're doing everything right and still not being seen, drop a sad face in the comments or comment, still here. If you refuse to disappear in your own life, let's keep going, because once you understand what truly pulls a man's heart closer, everything begins to shift. Carl Jung once said, we don't fall in love with the obvious, we fall in love with the symbolic. And what that means is more powerful than any surface-level connection advice you've ever heard. Because when a man truly connects, emotionally, spiritually, even in moments of deep closeness, it isn't with the version of you that tries to be what he wants. It's with the version of you who's living from her truth. Let me explain. Jung believed that every man carries within him a subconscious image of the feminine. He called it the anima. It's not about what you wear, how you look, or even how many candles are lit at dinner. It's about how deeply you reflect a feeling he's buried, sometimes for decades. A part of him that remembers comfort, wonder, freedom, or emotional safety. A part that was often silenced in childhood or disconnected during the pressure of adulthood. When a man meets a woman who unknowingly aligns with that symbolic image, something shifts, and it doesn't happen because she tried. It happens because she showed up fully grounded in who she is. That's why you'll often hear men say things like, I don't know what it is about her. I just can't stop thinking about her. It wasn't her dress. It was her energy. She reminded him of something he'd lost connection with, and that made her unforgettable. Take Sarah, for example. She was 62, divorced, and rebuilding her life from scratch. One afternoon at a bookstore, she struck up a casual conversation with a man over a book on mythology. They talked for less than 5 minutes. But later that week, he returned. Not for the book, for her. He said, You reminded me of my favorite teacher from childhood. I felt calm. Around you. She didn't try to impress him. She simply radiated groundedness, curiosity, warmth. She represented peace. That's Jung's truth in action. So how do you tap into this deeper form of connection without losing yourself? It begins when you stop performing and start resonating. Instead of asking, what should I do to get his attention? Ask, what do I feel drawn to express today? Men feel safest when you're emotionally congruent. Let who you are match how you speak, how you move, how you show up, and as you start living more from that space, another truth reveals itself. Behind every emotionally distant man is often a younger version of himself who was never emotionally safe. When he pulls away, don't chase. Instead, stay anchored. Let your calm be an invitation, not a demand. Finally, there's something even more beautiful to remember. Every day, you radiate an emotional essence, whether you realize it or not. This isn't about being the muse or the siren. It's about tuning into the emotional essence you're radiating today. Are you offering nurturing? Are you sparking lightness? Are you inviting quiet reflection? Let your emotional presence lead the way. When you stop trying to be interesting and start living as someone emotionally interested, the dynamic transforms. If this speaks to you, drop a 1 or comment "He remembers energy" below. We read every one. And this is where community and healing begin. In the next segment, I'll show you how to translate these shifts into everyday interactions, even if it's been years since you felt emotionally close. Because once you understand his inner world, you no longer have to chase his attention. You become the woman whose presence stays with him long after the moment has passed, and that kind of connection isn't just something you understand, it's something you live, moment by moment, choice by choice. So let's bring this down from theory into real life, because it's one thing to understand male psychology, and another to apply it in a way that feels natural, honest, and empowering. These next 3 tools are not tricks. They're not gimmicks. They are soul-level strategies to reach the heart of a man who has emotionally withdrawn, shut down, or simply never learned how to connect on a deeper level. And when used with care, they don't just shift how he sees you, they shift how you see yourself. One powerful way is to speak with suggestion, not conclusion. Let's say you're feeling disconnected. The old pattern might be to say, "You never talk to me anymore." But what if instead you said, "Sometimes I miss the way we used to laugh in the kitchen. Remember that night we couldn't stop laughing over burnt toast?" This isn't passive, it's invitational. It stirs memory, emotional warmth, safety. Psychologically, men respond better to evoked emotion than direct confrontation. Because suggestion bypasses defensiveness, it creates space instead of pressure. Practical tip: keep a connection journal. Write down shared moments that brought joy, then gently weave them into your conversations. These emotional touchpoints reconnect you faster than asking for change. Another soul-level shift is to use emotional silence intentionally. Most people fear silence. But when used intentionally, silence creates presence, gravity, and connection. Here's how: say something meaningful, then pause. Hold that silence like it matters. Example: when you looked at me yesterday, I felt something I hadn't felt in a while. Then say nothing. Let him absorb it. Let the space invite him in gently. Why this works? A man's brain is wired for problem solving. When you leave emotional space, he instinctively leans toward it. His nervous system slows down. He begins to feel rather than analyze. Real life. Example: Nadine, a viewer, shared that her partner had become distant. One evening, she rested her hand on his chest during a quiet show, looked at him, and said nothing. He muted the TV and said, "What are you thinking?" That became their first emotionally open moment in weeks. And one of the most beautiful ways to reconnect is to create moments of almost. Anticipation is the oldest form of emotional closeness. We forget this in long-term relationships. Everything becomes expected, repetitive, overly known. But connection thrives in the almost. Instead of reaching for a hug right away, pause. Let him lean in. Instead of finishing a sweet memory, leave a little mystery. Instead of instantly replying to a message, let a little space build curiosity. These small gaps create emotional energy, what we call emotional electricity. It's what keeps the nervous system engaged and the heart open. Example: Joelle, one of our viewers, started leaving handwritten notes for her husband in unexpected places: on the dashboard, in his wallet, next to the remote. Notes like, "Your laugh still makes me smile," or "I still remember our road trip in '97, soon." He started leaving notes too. That's not just love, that's reawakening presence. Bonus tip: don't underestimate the power of non-verbal signals. A longer glance, a soft touch on his arm, a smile that says more than words. These quiet gestures often reach him more deeply than anything spoken. So let's take a moment to breathe in what we've uncovered today. When you speak in suggestion, you stir memory and lower resistance. When you use silence intentionally, you create space for emotional presence to grow. And when you create moments of almost, you rebuild emotional energy and spark curiosity. These aren't about manipulation. They're about reclaiming your intuitive power, the quiet magnetism that already lives inside you. When you lead with emotional artistry instead of fear, you invite a man to meet you in his soul, not just with words, but with awareness. If one of these tools spoke to your heart, drop a comment below. Emotional mastery. And let me know, which one are you going to try this week? Because next, we're going even deeper into how to reclaim your emotional peace, your self-worth, and your quiet magnetism, the kind that doesn't chase connection, but creates it naturally. Take a deep breath with me now, because everything we've talked about leads here to the most powerful shift of all, not learning more tricks, but remembering more of who you already are. Let's bring everything home, because the most powerful thing you can do today isn't to memorize more techniques. It's to return to yourself. Carl Jung taught that true transformation doesn't come from striving. It comes from integration, bringing what's hidden into the light of awareness. So what does that mean for your relationships? It means the deeper your connection to you, the deeper your connections with others become. That's not just philosophy, that's emotional resonance. I want to share one more story with you. Angela was 63 when she found this channel. After years, inside what she called a quiet marriage, she decided to try something different, but she didn't start with her partner. She started with herself. Every morning, she asked one simple but powerful question. What energy do I want to bring into today? Slowly, she wove small rituals back into her life, a 10-minute walk in silence to feel the ground under her feet, lighting a candle at dinner, even when she was eating alone, wearing her favorite earrings, even if no one else would see them, and without forcing anything. Something began to shift, not just in Angela, but in the way her husband looked at her. He began asking her questions again, not because she begged for attention, but because he could feel her again, present, rooted, alive. And that's what true presence does. It doesn't demand, it doesn't perform. It simply leaves an impression that can't be ignored. So if you're asking, what now? The answer isn't in doing more, it's in becoming more grounded, more connected, more fully yourself. It starts when you reconnect with your emotional center. Many women spend decades caring for others, children, partners, aging parents, until they almost forget how it feels to be anchored in themselves. So today, ask yourself, what does calm feel like in my body? Your nervous system is the foundation of all connection. When you're rooted and steady, you don't have to chase emotional closeness. You radiate it. From that steady place, the next shift unfolds naturally. Define the emotional standard you now hold, not just what you expect from others, but the emotional quality you are no longer willing to live without. Ask yourself, how do I want love to feel? Not what he should say, not how he should behave, but how you want to feel, valued, heard, safe, light-hearted. When you define it clearly, you stop settling for scraps, and you start holding space for something deeper. And then, something powerful happens. You begin to embody the energy you want to attract. You stop waiting for someone to choose you. You stop seeking approval. You become the source of the emotional frequency you wish to experience. Before every interaction, ask yourself, what emotional energy do I want to bring into this space? Ease, compassion, clarity, lightness. And watch as the world around you begins to respond. This is how you reclaim your peace. Not by adjusting yourself to meet someone else's needs, but by aligning with your own emotional truth. You're not here to be remembered for how much you gave away. You're here to be remembered for how fully you lived. Because when a woman stops chasing emotional validation and starts living from clarity, she doesn't lose closeness. She attracts something far more meaningful. The kind of emotional bond that grows naturally. The kind that doesn't need to be explained. The kind that feels like coming home. And that is the kind of connection you were always worthy of. You've made it here. And that alone says something powerful about who you are. You're not here for tips and trends. You're here for truth, for healing, for growth. So take a moment. Reflect on this, not just with your mind, but with your heart. Was there a line that opened something in you? A moment where your chest tightened? A phrase that felt like it was written just for you? If so, that's no accident. That's the part of you that's ready to remember. You were never meant to dim your light for love. You were meant to become more of yourself and draw love in through that fullness. If this message touched something inside you, it means you're already on your way back to yourself. Drop a comment below. I remember me. Or share one word that captures how you feel in this moment, because your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. And if you're ready to keep walking this beautiful path with us, here's your next invitation. Drop a comment if this video felt like a reset. Share one belief you're letting go of about relationships and respond to someone else. Build the kind of community we all wish we had sooner. Let me leave you with this. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are just beginning the most magnetic chapter of your life. Not because someone new came along, but because you came home to yourself. Save this video, re-watch it, share it. Because as Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. But you, beautiful soul, are not here to live by fate. You're here to live by frequency. And when you raise yours, everything changes. If this message spoke to your heart, subscribe if you haven't yet. We have so much more to share, especially for women 50 and beyond. You're not just a viewer, you are a light, and together we're building something beautiful. Until we meet again, stay close to your truth. And remember, you are already everything you've been searching for. See you in the next one, and just remember, the right hearts always find each other when the light is true.